You can even trip over a piece of wood. What a waste. Ava slammed the postcard on the table, her laugh slicing into my ears. I was brushing dust off my hands, watching her in calm eyes step into the room in new shoes. Mom and Dad sat at the dining table, caught in the halo of her smile, while I remained invisible. So you can't even manage your own life and you dare to speak. She traced a finger across a photo, lightly tapping countries I had never visited. I bent to pick up the fallen clutter, the cardboard soaked, making a dull sound. All my life she flew free while I clung to rules. She got praise, I got ignored. At every family dinner she shared travel stories, parents nodded, approving my efforts, treated like air. She dyed her hair pink at 15 and blogged about environmental protection. I wore the same hoodie 3 days, got criticized. In college she dropped out to chase her dreams. I worked overtime to pay rent, silently carrying life's weight. On weekends I did laundry, moved boxes, balanced accounts. She sunbathed abroad, inventing story tags. Parents always asked her about plans. When I answered, nobody looked. One dinner Dad raised a glass to wish her luck, chasing dreams. I set down a promotion letter silently. Ava glanced at me, corners of her mouth lifting as if to say, you will never catch me. I put down my cutlery and looked at her, smiling calm without hostility. She called me a dull barcode worker while she was a dazzling traveler. 3 years later she watched me deliver the first big order with my own hands. Fingers trembling, voice hoarse, how did you do it? Her smile stiff, her teacups shaking slightly. For the first time she realized I was no longer the little brother she looked down on. My life had always been underestimated, but that overlooked calm planted a seed of revenge. I moved boxes, she posted online. I balanced accounts, she sunbathed. I carried pressure, she enjoyed praise. This was the gap between us, clear and cruel. But the real turning point was not her showing off, nor my parents' favoritism. It was that weekend visitor. Are you Owen? Mr. Aldridge stood at the warehouse door, holding an old folder, eyes sharp. I nearly dropped the cardboard in my hands. He smiled, slow and deep, testing me. Do you have time to help me move a drill press? It's bigger than a normal horse. I nodded, agreeing, not knowing this small help would change my life. After that day, dust, sweat, and fatigue in the warehouse gained value. Ava's world continued to shine while I started building a lighthouse in mine. Saturday morning I drove to Mr. Aldridge's workshop. The car still smelled of oil from the warehouse. He was adjusting a rusty table saw as if someone owed him a debt. You know how to use your hands? I shrugged, probably. He handed me gloves and goggles, instructing steady movements. We moved the old drill press, tightened bolts, adjusted slides. I focused on every detail. A whole day of labor left me greasy but strangely satisfied. At lunch we sat on milk crates. He handed me an egg salad sandwich. I bit, sweat sliding down my face. You are stronger than you think, he said slowly, eyes affirming, unlike parents' floating words. Next day I returned, no promise of pay. Just, you need to leave that warehouse or your back will deform. I felt the trust long missing, more important than any praise. Day after day I learned welding, milling, grinding, touch tools I had never seen. Every mistake he threw me a wrench, fix it. I began asking, why design like this, why that angle? He explained patiently, no mockery, no contempt. Weeks later I completed my first small project. Fixed an old tool rack, adjusted welds, smoothed every edge. Ava messaged, still moving bricks. I told her, learning welding. She laughed, old man teaching you, hope you don't become a tool nerd. I casually said, I am already making my own things. In that laugh I sensed subtle change. She could not judge me so easily. 3 weeks later I was fully immersed in metalwork. Time no longer belonged to the warehouse but to me. Every weld, every cut, practice and declaration, I am capable of controlling life. Mr. Aldridge let me try a custom client project. A customer wanted a grill with personalized engraving. I completed it independently, measuring, welding, calculating each step. When delivered, client moved to tears, paid more than expected. I realized I was no longer the warehouse clerk, but someone who could create value. I began planning my brand, registering a website. photographing projects, labeling materials and techniques. Clients started contacting me, hardware stores, cafes, landscaping companies wanted custom products. For the first time, effort directly earned recognition, not empty praise. Ava saw my updates, briefly unsettled. Her social media could not hide my growth. I stayed calm, focused. She began doubting her speed and height. When Ava returned home, she carried souvenirs and a new tone. I wanted to stay here for a while. I looked up at her. She wanted to join my work but could not handle the machines. I assigned her basic tasks: cleaning scraps, sorting screws, recording materials. She realized for the first time the gap between ideal and reality. Dust, sweat, repeated lifting and organizing meant she could not rely on looks or labels for recognition. Days later, looking at oil-stained copper wire, she said softly, "This is harder than I imagined." I nodded, silently continued welding, sparks and machines roaring. Ava began feeling powerless, realizing past superiority useless in the workshop. I calmly checked her work, occasionally correcting angles, handing tools. She tried to understand, clumsy, her fingers cut. I did not laugh, but she began doubting herself. Weeks later, she had to admit my skill and persistence were beyond her easy reach. I personally guided her through a small project. She worked sweating. I inspected every weld. When finished, I photographed, saved to client files. She felt achievement, not performance. Talbot Cafe custom bench project started. I independently designed, cut, welded, ground, and delivered early. Client praised, social media shared, my brand grew steadily. Ava could only watch, powerless, her smile tense and stiff. At a family dinner, she asked quietly, "Are you doing metal business?" I calmly replied, "Yes, my own shop, clients, regular steady income." Parents stunned. Ava's eyes flickered, realizing I had surpassed her halo. She stood at the door, silent, helpless, regret. I gave her the simplest work. She accepted silently, no more criticism, no more show. 2 weeks later, she learned respect, obedience, cooperation. I controlled the situation, taking initiative. She realized for the first time I was more than the warehouse shadow. I was someone who could change destiny. Every attempt she made to shine, I calmly guided. Every weld, every correction was my response to past neglect. Eventually, she bent over, cleaning scraps, hands greasy. I stood at the workbench, checking custom projects. She no longer laughed, no longer criticized, first time experiencing my world. I nodded lightly. "You learned it." Ava stepped back, face complex, realizing who controlled. I calm and strong, every operation revenge, every delivery evidence. She trembled, first time asking for help, not criticizing. I did not respond, continued organizing tools. She whispered, "I understand." I just nodded, revenge needs no words. She embarrassed, regretful, I firmly held my life. Victory in reality heavier than any verbal glory.